Hey, here's Dr. Stacy, Dean of Health and Wellness, coming to talk with you about having difficult conversations, especially when you disagree with people. Some people may call it civil discourse. So, way back when the words were uttered by Rodney King, who was a black man who was violently beaten by the LA police, and there were subsequent civil unrest after the cops that beat him were acquitted. And he came out and he said, can we all just get along? Can we all just get along? Rodney King spoke this because of the level of divisiveness and hostility among Americans at that point. People were entrenched in their beliefs, in their political affiliations, in what they believed was right and wrong, very similar to the way that things are currently in our country. Sounds familiar, right? And I've thought about Rodney King as I've thought about the season that we are currently in. Can we all just get along? I've even asked myself that same question. Now, I want to give you a few tips about how to have difficult conversations when you disagree. The first thing is to begin with the end in mind, to be clear about what your end goals are for the conversation. Now, sometimes you're trying to maybe proselytize or help people convert to believe what you believe. That's a goal. Or the goal may be to remain that you have a deeper understanding where you are coming from, where the other person is coming from. Yeah, both of those things. To even maybe make sure that the relationship itself is intact at the end, or to go to a deeper level in that relationship. Those are all good goals. And those goals, or that grand tour vision about what your goal is for the conversation, will direct how you interact and your behavior in that conversation. Now, let me say this. People oftentimes talk about we can agree to disagree, and that's fine. But I want to be clear that that's fine when we're talking about Peyton Manning versus Tom Brady or pizza toppings. But we can't agree to disagree when it comes to my life. So begin with the end in mind is good. The second thing that I want you to remember is to avoid name calling or absolutes. Calling people horseface or nasty woman or monster or what is it, liberal, fair-headed liberal, or those kinds of things. That's problematic. That is not going to move the conversation further along. And it is, again, it may not fit your original goals is to develop a deeper understanding, develop a deeper connection, to be understood, to hear and to listen. So calling people's names are not helpful, but hyperbole and absolutes are not helpful either. And what I mean by that is, well, you always do this, and Republicans always do that, and Democrats always do that, and this group always does that. Nobody always does anything, and no one member of every group is alike. Like, folks are not a monolith. And so it's important to remember that. Like, I personally know people who are supportive of their party but might not be supportive of the candidate. And so it is important to not brush all people with the same stroke. The other thing that I want you to remember is to choose your partners thoughtfully. My husband has a saying. He says, a man or woman or person or human convinced against their will is of the same opinion still. And the notion is that you don't want to try to engage in a civil discourse with somebody who is not interested in that, but is interested more in debate versus dialogue, or you know that they're so entrenched in what you believe what they believe, that there's no way that they are going to be willing to hear you, or maybe they don't have the emotional intelligence or interpersonal skills to be able to have a good dialogue. The emotional labor that it takes in order to have conversations with people is great and taxing. And so it's important that in the process of having civil discourse with others, that again, you choose your partners wisely. The other thing that I want to encourage you to do is 2 ears, 1 mouth, 2 ears, 1 mouth, 2 ears, 1 mouth. That you listen twice as much as you're talking, and that you engage in radical listening. Now, part of what that also means is that you're not listening to develop your rebuttal. Oh, he said this, I'm going to say this. Like, not that, but more that you are listening to understand. Because even when you don't agree with somebody, that sometimes you can come to a place of mutual understanding of where the person is. I am oftentimes curious, I think it's the psychologist in me, I am oftentimes curious about how people think different than me, when something that seems so clear to me and something that seems so clear to somebody else in a different mindset or framework or schema, how they came to that conclusion. I am always curious about that. And so when I'm engaging in civil discourse, I am oftentimes trying to listen to understand. So remember, radical listening, 2 ears, 1 mouth. Listen to understand. Don't engage in absolutes, hyperbole, or name calling. Choose your partners thoughtfully and begin with the end in mind. These are complicated times for us as a country. In Susquehanna, these are complicated times for us as a university, because certainly we are a microcosm of what's happening more larger in the world, more large or larger than the world. And so do what you can to have civil discourse with each other. I guarantee you'll learn something, you'll understand it better, but choose your partners wisely. Thanks so much for listening. Bye-bye.